Management is doing things right, but leadership is doing the right things. And I think in PR, as much or more than any other profession, that's something we always need to keep in mind. This is not a business that's about wordsmithing or spin control or other things. It's about leadership in the right kinds of behavior, and leadership in the right kinds of engagement with various parts of our constituency, and leadership is really, I think, more than anything, about more than great performance yourself. It's about bringing out great performance in everyone around you. When I look at great leaders in history and great leaders in our business, they're people who follow the advice of Abraham Lincoln, who said that towering genius disdains the beaten path. So they're always looking for new paths and how they can help others get on those paths and succeed. Having the core values that really are exemplified in the Page principles and some other leadership mantras in our business. Be honest, be forthright, be engaging with your stakeholders, and I think especially understanding what the full dimensions of communications really are. It's not just about how we frame things to say them the right way. It's great listening and understanding of the full dimensions of the mission of whatever our organization is, whether it's a company, an educational institution, a nonprofit organization, a government agency. What is that mission? What are the values of that organization, and how can we best exemplify them in both words and deeds? First of all, I started out as a newspaper reporter, and whether you start as a reporter or in any other field, I think some of those principles that make a good newspaper reporter, strong writing, not just that you write well, but that you care about writing. I wish I saw among some of the emerging talents in our business, and what I try to stimulate is more discussion just about what makes for elegant writing and what does that mean. And first of all, it requires being very inquisitive, doing a lot of reading yourself, and recognizing who the most successful people are in our business, and either ask through research that you do, or ask them directly what matters most to them and what paths they followed in their career development. Perhaps the most important for me, and I think it's something that everybody goes through in their development as a leader, is that ability to trust that others can do things as well as you can, or maybe even better, and to recognize that the great maestros in history, in many cases, were outstanding musicians themselves. So Leonard Bernstein was a great pianist, and Mstislav Rostropovich from the National Symphony Orchestra was a great cellist. But what made them great conductors and great maestros was not their own personal musical virtuosity. It was what they brought out of the rest of that orchestra, how they channeled the creativity and vision of the composer, and then the way they communicated and with both the musicians and with the audience, and made for a transcendent experience. And I think in everyday business and certainly in public relations, that ability to recognize not only what things will make the difference between success or failure, but also inspiring and motivating and demonstrating those behaviors and principles for those that you really need to count on to deliver that wonderful symphony. Probably the person that a lot of us in the profession have benefited from and been inspired by in recent years is John Iwata of IBM, who not only is an incredibly accomplished professional himself, and became not only the CCO but also then eventually CMO of IBM. In the spirit of leadership, he's helped all of us to really think about what the role of the chief communications officer in an organization is, and how companies should and can aspire to be more when it comes to to their engagement with stakeholders. And really how all of the changes that have come about because of the digital age and otherwise have changed maybe some of the, even if they haven't changed the fundamental principles, they've changed a lot of how we operate day to day, and I think he's been an inspiration to all of us. For me, it would be impossible to say that, to answer that question without pointing to somebody who's a great historical figure, but also happens to still have the office next to mine in my New York office, and that's Harold Burson, who at 94 years old still comes to work every day and still sets an example for all of us. And I think what makes great leaders in this business, that ability to see beyond the obvious and continually ask both the pertinent and impertinent questions that sometimes you need to be asked in different situations. His unending inquisitiveness. He still seeks out mentors to teach him about the social media and about other new developments that are happening today. But also through the years, he's been incredibly generous in how he's shared his insights and experience with others. And when you work with Harold, it's always very obvious that he's not sitting there trying to make himself look like the most important person in the room or the smartest person in the room. He's asking those questions that can help everybody in the room to think about things in a different way and maybe come on those solutions themselves. And so for me, it's Harold Burson. Well, they're implemented in different ways. I think the principles of leadership, and I think they're the same in every field. It's like asking if one should drive your car differently in this street versus that street. There are going to be things you'll encounter on one street that won't be on another, but what really makes successful leaders is going to be similar, and those are that ability to understand what's the right thing to do, to not only suss that out yourself, but be really a strong multiplier effect for everybody around you, so that you're bringing out the best of everyone around you, and being forthright with your feedback. So in other words, giving strong direction, but also helping everybody to adjust that as situations unfold. And so many of those principles are the same in any kind of business. They just get applied differently in different ones. And one other point, the great leaders at the CEO level or the CFO level or the CMO level or the CHRO level in whatever organization, or great professors, all of the great leaders in every field, at the core of that is very much the leadership aspects of public relations. In other words, they are first and foremost great communicators. They inspire, they motivate, they're not just passing along information. And so I think that those principles, which are very important in PR, are applied to any business. The approach, I mean, again, they get applied in different ways, but the approach is different. When we think about what makes a great client relationship leader in our business in an agency, what I always try to impart to our teams is it's the same thing that we find valuable in a client. So in other words, inside that company, they're focused on understanding the business. They understand the competitive set of that business. They understand, appreciate, and love the brands that they're dealing with. They're thinking strategically all the time, not just how do I respond to what's here, but how can I think about this in a different way? They're developing ideas creatively, and then always, always, always executing flawlessly, or aspiring to. And so in each of these areas that applies. There are some differences in the business model in each of these, but the leadership principles are, I think, constant. I think the number one, figure out who is doing that well and find out why. In other words, if they've written books or there have been books about them. I think when I was first getting into this business, or really it wasn't related to this business, but I've probably read a dozen or 15 books on Abraham Lincoln because I thought of him as the most effective leader in our country's history. And really early in my career, I spent a good deal of time reading biographies of great people through history, which I think tells you what they found important. So first is that figure out where the best practices are and what you can do to adapt those or adopt them. Second is ask questions, be inquisitive. Everyone wants to be able to, even if they seem busy and they don't at first respond in maybe the way you thought they would. Great professionals, great leaders want to be able to share the qualities of leadership. So be persistent and figure out ways to do that. And sometimes you might be surprised. You go and approach or write to a very accomplished leader, and they'll take the time and respond. And then third, I think learn and be dedicated, especially earlier in your career, to the fundamentals of the business. It's not in your first few years. Don't be overly focused on what does this assignment mean to the rest of my career, or how do I get this title to be better today? Because what you do in those first few years is really setting up when the real leadership opportunities are going to come and when the real accomplishments are going to happen. When I was starting out as a newspaper reporter, they assigned me my first assignment was to be an obituary writer. And I thought that was going to be this dead end. I went home and told my wife, I think maybe I better go find another field because they think all I can do is write obituaries. But instead I thought about, how do I make myself the best darn obit writer this paper's ever had? And that was the goal I set for myself. And whether it's hubris or self-delusion or anything else, every step of the way in my career I've thought about, what's the best way to do whatever this assignment is? How can I be the best at that? And then I set out to do that. And there are a lot of implications in what that means to figure that out. But if you're focused on that, you're focused on the right things rather than, is this the best use of my time, or do I want to do this for the rest of my life? You're not going to, whatever you're doing right now in the first few years, you're probably not going to do that for the rest of your life. Don't sweat it. Focus on learning, focus on writing, focus on asking the right questions. The ability to write clearly and effectively, and again, all the aspects of effective communication, which is really more than ever about engagement, right? And it's about listening as well as virtually listening or directly listening. So number one, the fundamentals of effective communications. Number two, I think some of the programs run by the Planck Center, by the PRSSA, by the PRSA Foundation, and by a number of other organizations are highly effective. If they existed in the way they do now, when I was a student, I didn't know it. I didn't know I was going to be in PR, frankly. But I think there are a lot of effective organizations that one can either directly participate in and/or virtually participate. And by all means, jump into that. When we look at entry-level professionals, we're looking at somebody that's already, when you show up, and we're essentially, for one of our internships, and you're a junior in college, we're expecting that you've already demonstrated some commitment to this field, some capability in that area, and it can be anything. It can be doing something in a neighborhood organization, or it could be doing something at the school, but show that seriousness and think about that how that's going to help build those fundamental capabilities and skills that you will then translate as experience develops and knowledge develops into true leadership and true professionalism. Are there naturally great leaders? Of course. I mean, there are naturally great musicians. There are naturally great people in every profession. But the ideals and principles and elements of leadership are learnable and teachable. And frankly, it is our responsibility as professionals and as students. It's our responsibility to be constantly in that 360 process of learning and teaching. From my perch of more than 30 years of working with so many different companies and with so many different people throughout the PR profession, I can absolutely assure you there are great leaders in this business. In many cases, people have just not had a chance to see it, and maybe too many of us allow the urgent to overtake the important, as someone once said, and we're not spending the time to really demonstrate and define what that leadership is. Now, that said, there are perhaps not enough things being done to support exactly the kind of program that the Planck Center runs and a number of other organizations to couple leaders in the business with students and with emerging professionals in a ways that can more deeply enable them to share ideas and to teach some of the principles of leadership about having strong values, about the fundamentals of communications, about the right kind of engagement with stakeholders and the right kind of listening. And so I think that would be the best step, but also for us to maybe do more to celebrate and recognize where there are great leaders in this business. I think a good place for starting on leadership in any profession, I think certainly in ours, is a book called True Professionalism by David Maister. And he has very good ideas about what the elements of great professionalism are, which are also coincidentally many of the characteristics of great leaders. And I think he's got very helpful practical advice in that book. I think it came out in the late 90s. I think the best advice is, first of all, focus on your writing skills and some of your other basic communication skills. Be a voracious reader, especially of media writ large, all media, traditional media, social media, the various emerging elements of media, and focus on where your particular interests lie, because I think if you have a passion about what you're working on, that comes through in your work. It comes through in how you dive into it and in the effectiveness of your the skills you develop and the expertise that you then demonstrate. We want most of all to see someone who has already demonstrated a serious commitment to this profession. And that doesn't mean that you've had PR jobs, because you're probably coming for an entry-level job. But it means that you've done internships in college and you can show how those apply to challenges my organization might face or our clients might face. So you've done some research, first of all, on what those challenges might be. You're asking questions. You don't have to come in being an expert on everything. You should be asking questions and showing an inquisitive nature and some insightful observations or questions that will let us then see how you'll apply those skills and those tendencies toward the work you'll do with us. And most important, focus in that period in school, but also in your early professional years, in developing your core communication skills, especially writing, but also active listening and trying to understand the greater world in which our clients are operating, because and if they then use that to apply their skills, this will be a really successful career.